It's called Seven Lessons for Living from the Dying. And these were the spiritual lessons that I was taught by my patients. And the first that I already mentioned being, so I think one of the best ways to be prepared is to remember that it's all fleeting and nothing lasts for very long. So we have to make the most of it that we possibly can. Hello, my name is Dr. Karen Wyatt. I am a retired now hospice physician. I worked with hospice patients for a number of years and also worked as a family doctor. I live now in Redondo Beach, California. And for my work now, I write books and I host a podcast called End of Life University. There I interview people who work in interesting areas around death, dying, grief, the afterlife, near-death experiences. And I really enjoy doing the interviews and posting them online for people to listen to. And also writing books about the spiritual experiences I've had with patients in hospice and the lessons that I learned from my hospice patients. I think the lessons that death has to teach us about life. And that's what I enjoy writing books about. When I was 5 years old, my mother has told me the story. I had some sort of illness, some sort of an infection with a fever. And she went in to find me in the morning and I wasn't breathing and my heart had stopped beating. And so that's as much as I know about this. My father did CPR. They called the ambulance. I was taken to the hospital in the ambulance and eventually my heart started beating again and I started breathing. And the only thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. And I was just 5. But from that point on, it seemed when I was a child that I had a lot of understanding about spiritual experiences. And I remember really clearly being in school and learning about the concept of infinity and having this real awakening of like, oh my goodness, I know what that is. Like I have seen that. I've seen the universe. I've seen infinity. I know what that is. And so that was an interesting experience. Later, however, in life, I was at an afterlife conference where we were listening to speakers talking about the afterlife. And a woman who is psychic came to me and said, oh, I received a message for you to let you know that when you were 5, you were taken out of your body so that you could be shown things that you needed to know for later in life, things that would help you. And you had to be, she said, your spirit had to be taken from your body so that you could be shown these things. And so that was very interesting to me. It made me think perhaps this was a near-death experience for me that I just couldn't remember because I was too little. But subsequently, I had other experiences. I had a visitation from an angel in my room when I was about 10, which I interpreted as my guardian angel. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw like this angelic presence in my room. And then I had an epiphany that I should become a doctor, and later that I would be a doctor who healed people with love, because love is the power that heals and changes everything. And so those experiences really informed me spiritually and laid the foundation, I guess, for my spiritual life and my experiences then with hospice patients later on. Well, I would say primarily this idea of love, that there's this force of energy in the universe that to me I could only describe as love, and that love creates everything, love heals and transforms everything, and that it's possible to be a channel for that love and to bring more love to the planet and spread it to other people, and to help other people transform and heal through love. So that's primarily what I learned through my initial experience. But there were other lessons that I learned by sitting with my patients in hospice as they were dying, from listening to them tell me about what they had learned about life. And one of those lessons was about the fact that we all experience some sort of suffering or pain or difficulties as we go through life, and that's just a normal part of life. And it's actually part of our learning experience here, that we learn how to stay in the presence of love, even when we're having difficulties and struggling. And so that was one of the most powerful lessons I learned from my hospice patients, is that we should not be seeking to get rid of all suffering in our lives, and we shouldn't view all suffering as something bad that should not have happened, that it's just part of life. And the more we can embrace that within our lives, the more we're able to learn from it and to use it in a positive way in our lives. One thing that I was aware of in working with hospice patients is that I could see light. I could see the light of what I interpreted to be their souls. And especially the closer they got to dying, I could see more and more light emanating from them. And that's how I knew the physical body was kind of dissolving away and fading away, and their souls were being released in a way from the physical body. And I could see that. I also, with some of the patients, I was able, even patients who couldn't speak any longer, I could hold their hands and I had a sense of what they were experiencing, and of for some, what they needed. If they were feeling fear at the time, I understood how to be with them and reassure them as they were getting closer to death, that everything would be okay for them and they were safe. And so by holding their hands, I was able to have that experience with them. And then I often had dreams as well. I would dream of my patients shortly before they died. And in the dreams, I would see them as they were before they became ill. I would see them whole and healthy and younger in my dream, and also as a spirit form in a way, like full of light and transparent. And I was able to communicate with them. And each time I had a dream, I understood that they were close to dying, that they would die very shortly after that. I would say I I I learned things from them probably when they were still verbal, when the patients would talk to me about the importance of love, and that love is the most important thing in life, and also forgiveness, and that we each need to be working on forgiving other people, forgiving ourselves, forgiving our life, even for things that have happened to us in life, and not holding on to any kind of blame or anger or resentment, because that's what actually keeps us from becoming our full selves, if we stay attached to negativity about what has happened in the past. And so that was a really powerful lesson for me to learn at that time, partly because in my own personal life, I was grieving over my father's death, and my father had died by suicide before I got involved in hospice work. So I still had I had a lot of pain and guilt and anger and grief that I myself was working through. And these messages I got from the patients were really helpful to me, to remind me that I needed to keep working on my healing. I wasn't just here to help other people heal. I was here to heal myself and to heal from my own life experiences. And so those experiences with patients were so valuable to me, to remind me of those lessons. Um, let's see, there were a couple of really interesting patients that I cared for. One man had advanced Alzheimer's disease and had not been able to speak for over a year. He had not been verbal at all because he was in the very end stage of Alzheimer's. And about a week before he died, in the middle of the night, his wife awakened to hear him speaking totally normal, articulate, normal speech. And he was talking to his father, who had died before him, and having a conversation back and forth. And so it appeared at that time he was he was communicating with his father, maybe had come and, in a spirit form to wait for him as he was ready to die. And he was able to speak in spite of the fact that he had not spoken for over a year. And that was really miraculous to witness. And another patient of mine also regularly had conversations with his brother, who he said his brother who had died before him, was in the room. He could see his brother and would talk to him. And he asked his brother to go away because he wasn't ready to die yet. And he said, please come back later. I don't want to die right now. And asked his brother to leave and then come back at another time. And I thought that was really interesting as well. It's called 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying. And these were the spiritual lessons that I was taught by my patients. And the first that I already mentioned being suffering, that we have to learn how to just embrace the pain and difficulty that comes to us in life. And that had to do with my father's suicide death, that I carried so much grief and guilt and pain about, that I had to learn how to embrace that and how to make it be part of me, but go on living without creating too much negativity inside myself around it. And the second lesson is the lesson of love, that love is the most powerful force that can help us transcend everything. And that sometimes our suffering actually helps lead us to even greater love, because suffering tends to break down the ego and the obstacles that we have within us to experiencing the divine love that surrounds us. And love itself is so powerful. If we focus on nothing else in our lives, it would change everything. And then forgiveness is the third lesson, that as we begin to love more and more and deeper, we have to be able to forgive. The only way to go deeper in love is if we can forgive and let go of the anger and bitterness and resentment that we feel toward others. And once we're able to do that and begin to let go of everything from the past that we're holding on to, we can be far more in the present moment, which is the fourth lesson, to learn how to be fully here right now in this moment, instead of thinking all the time about something that happened in the past or worrying about the future. Just be present right here, right now. And then the next lesson had to do with purpose, the purpose of life and why we are here. And that was something that I saw a lot of my patients struggle with understanding. Did I fulfill my purpose? Did I do enough while I was here? Does my life have meaning? And it became clear to me that our purpose is just to become the best people we're capable of being, regardless of what kind of work we choose or our career path or other things we do. As long as we're working toward being our best selves and healing our old wounds, that's our real purpose. And finding a way to bring more love into the world, that's what our purpose is about. So that's the fifth lesson. The sixth one is the lesson of surrender and being able to let go of our expectations and even our hopes and desires for what life should bring us. To be able to just go with the flow of life and accept whatever comes our way. And then finally, the seventh lesson is just accepting impermanence, that nothing lasts and everything changes in this life. And that is a part of life. And that's a feature that actually makes life so precious and so beautiful, that it's not lasting. And that's why we have to be in the present and enjoy each moment just as it is. So those are the 7 lessons that were shown to me. And when we get all the way to the lesson of impermanence, it actually brings us right back to, again, to look at suffering, because once we understand that nothing lasts and everything changes, we don't suffer nearly as much when things do change. And when loved ones die or move away or relationships break up, because we've already accepted that nothing will last forever. So we start the whole cycle, the whole spiral all over again. Yeah, from observing and talking with my patients in hospice Um, though it was as if these 7 things were things that I had always known within me, and watching patients as they were dying is what brought all of that together and all of that wisdom to the surface. So I began to understand it, and I could see it so much more clearly in my life. Well, one thing that I have seen happen is that some people talk about seeing a bright light, or I mentioned this before, seeing loved ones in the room with them. Some patients have talked about seeing a staircase up in the corner of the room, and they tell us that they're going to walk up the stairs. They have a sense that they're going to ascend up the stairs. Um, Many of them have told me that they see light. They can see light when they close their eyes, and it's really beautiful. It's like so beautiful. It's like nothing they've ever seen before. And they they feel safe, and they just feel pure love. Another patient told me that she could feel her body dissolving. That's the word she used, that her body was dissolving. And that it felt very positive and good to her, that the body was dissolving away and she was becoming more and more her pure self. So it seems as if they're experiencing the separation of their soul or their spirit from the physical body as they're going through the dying process. I myself had a dream like this once, of going through a tunnel and then being shown a big room filled with light, but it was a place where there was like a life review that people talk about. I had a chance to see on the walls of this circular room were all these little videos of my life, of all kinds of different scenes from my life, little videos that were playing, and they were all interlocked like the pieces of a puzzle. And I could walk around the room and look at everything, my entire life, and all these little videos of different moments in my life were playing. And as I looked at that, I I realize now that may be what a life review is like for people who have died. They're seeing their whole life somehow. But what I saw in that room is that all these pieces, everything that happened, they all fit together, as I said, like the pieces of a puzzle. And I suddenly realized, like, oh, wow, every single thing that happened was necessary. It was a piece of the puzzle that fit perfectly. So each tiny moment, each tiny little thing needed to be there to make the puzzle complete, to make the whole picture of my life complete. And there's nothing that I would take away from my life or say should never have happened. It was all perfect as it was. And in the dream, there was an old man who was showing me these videos and walking around with me around the room. And I said, oh, when I look at this, I see how perfect everything was. It was all perfect, just the way it was. There's nothing that I could take away. And I said, if only I had known this earlier in my life, that everything was perfect the way it was unfolding, I wouldn't have worried so much. And he said, no, no, even the worry was perfect. And so what that showed me is whatever we're experiencing in life, it's all part of the picture, this tapestry, this puzzle of our lives. And even the way we react to it, how we handle it, how we navigate it, it's all meant to be part of our life. And so that experience for me kind of gave me a clue of what perhaps the life review might be like for someone after they've died. And when I compare it with what some people with near-death experiences have told me. Well, one of the messages that I came away with from my work in hospice is that each one of us needs to remember that lesson of impermanence, that we won't live forever, and that each one of us will face our own dying. And the more we get comfortable with that idea, the better we can live our lives right now, because we're aware every day, like, gosh, oh gosh, it's a beautiful summer day today. If I don't go out and enjoy it, though, it will slip away and I won't have this day again. And when you remember that I will die someday, and I don't know, it could be sooner, could be later, I might as well enjoy everything I can right now that's here and available to me. So I think one of the best ways to be prepared is to remember that it's all fleeting and nothing lasts for very long. So we have to make the most of it that we possibly can here and now. And what I found is the patients I worked with who were not afraid to die were the patients who had had very full lives, who loved life and they had lived it fully, and they did, they took risks, they loved everything that they did and loved other people and loved their lives, and they weren't afraid to let life go because they had experienced it fully. And the people who were more afraid were people who never really allowed themselves to live. They never allowed themselves to be joyful and happy and feel love. And then suddenly, when they became ill and knew they were dying, it all felt too late. Like, oh, I missed my chance. I didn't get to experience those things. So I guess that my advice is get comfortable right now with the idea that life is short and fleeting, and make the most of it and work on bringing more love for yourself, healing yourself, and bringing more love into your own life, because that will only make things better for you as you go along. I'm not sure we can overcome it, in that war seems to be part of human nature in a way. It's like part of our lower consciousness as human beings. And we have to get to our higher consciousness and be guided by our higher consciousness, our souls, our divine awareness, before we um, before we can transcend our our hatred, our own hatred for other people. And I think war comes from our hatred and our ego's desire for power. And we need to be in our higher consciousness in order to transcend that, so that we choose not to live that way anymore. We choose not to bring hate into the world. We choose not to bring suffering to other people. But it takes a lot for each individual to do their own healing and their work and get into a state of higher consciousness. I think if we ever had a time in history when most people in the world were living from their higher consciousness, I think would see war diminish greatly. But we haven't gotten to that place yet, and it feels like a very big challenge. How do we help the world transcend and raise to a higher level of consciousness? I think that's one of the most important tasks of our lifetime, is to work on that kind of forgiveness. And I think the first thing we have to do is be willing to look within ourselves and look at our lives and recognize that we're holding on to a lot of pain and maybe blame and anger toward other people, because our society kind of tells us to ignore all those feelings and shove those aside and not express them. But in fact, we have to experience them. We have to go inside and remember what has happened, re-experience the pain and acknowledge it if we want to heal it. And one thing I have learned is that sometimes that pain is stored actually in the body, in our tissues and in our cells. And so it's not enough to just think about it, to think about the pain and the emotions. We have to allow our bodies to release. So we might need to do yoga or some sort of exercise or somatic exercises that help the body let go, like get deep massages or things that help our muscles and our tissues actually release the pain that's been stored there. And I think that might be the cause of illness for a lot of people too. The body itself is just holding on to this old pain and resentment. And so we really have to create for ourselves this kind of a program of working on it, of working with our minds to remember pain that has happened, with our emotions to let it out, to cry, to get angry, write letters, write down all of our thoughts and feelings, and then with the body as well, to release whatever pain is being stored in the body, and always trying to replace whatever needed to be healed, whatever pain is there, with love, to try to bring in more love. I think another big problem, at least here in the US, is that people don't really love themselves. And maybe that's true all over the world, but people feel that it's selfish or wrong somehow to say that I love myself, I care about myself, I have compassion for me. And I think that's something we need to work on and try to bring in more compassion for ourselves and for who we are. I think it takes working on some spiritual practices. And as I mentioned for myself, I was dealing with grief for a number of years, and grief is actually a very low vibrational state when you're stuck in grief. And so looking back, I see how for those years that I was stuck in grief, I made very little progress. I couldn't grow very much. I couldn't even take in very much new information. And I had to start doing, and actually, I mean, the work of going to become a hospice doctor was one of the things that shifted me out of that. Going to sit with people who are dying and spending time with them and giving them something they needed, giving to them and being generous and giving my time and my energy to them actually helped shift me out of grief. And so I think consciously seeking out practices like gratitude and looking for joy and laughter and love in life, those can shift us to a higher vibrational state. And as soon as we get to that higher state, we're so much more capable of learning more and taking in more things. And that helps us grow more quickly. And it all builds on itself. So, so again, I guess I was saying gratitude, joy, laughter, love, those are all higher vibrational states that we can practice. We can choose to practice that. We can have a gratitude practice where we write thank you letters and say thank you to people. And we can choose laughter and humor and more joyful, pleasant activities in our lives. I believe that there is a divine force in the universe of love, and I call it God, but I'm not sure that's the same that other people think of when they talk about God. So for me, it's like God is this inner powerful energy of love that creates everything and infuses everything with life and with love. It's a force, I guess. And that was something that I came to believe in because when I was much younger, I think I saw God as more like a human-like figure up in the sky, and that I could no longer believe that anymore. I couldn't see it that way. That was too limiting of how I viewed God. So now I would say the divine creator or the creator of all, the universal spirit, or just pure love. That's how I would define God. I think, I think that we come here kind of as spirits. We come here to take on a physical form and a physical body here on Earth. And I think that it's to learn how to love better. I think it's to learn how to experience the challenges of being a human on planet Earth, which is hard. It's not an easy place to live. We go through a lot being on this planet, but I think that spiritually that challenge may be good for us. It helps us grow. We learn so much, and we learn how to love more fully and more deeply, even though we're in pain, even though things have been hard for us. And that's what I came to see as I think maybe that's why we're here, so that we can grow ourselves, grow our own spirits in a way by facing these challenges here on Earth. I was with one patient as she was dying, and I held her hands, and I felt very strongly that she was very afraid because she had never had any sort of religious life or spiritual beliefs at all during her lifetime. And and what I experienced at holding her hands is that she was seeing a beautiful light, but she was afraid that it wasn't for her, or that she didn't deserve to go to that light or have that, because she'd never believed in it before. And so that was one experience I had with her, and I was able to tell her that, whatever is being shown to you, whatever you're experiencing, it's for you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you believed in your lifetime or anything about your life. It's there for you now. And it's okay for you to receive that. It's okay for you to go to that. And then she finally relaxed. I felt the fear go away, and I felt her get into a much calmer state.